My ex demanded $10,000 for her 4 kids' school trip. When I said I'd only pay for my twins, she asked me for $80,000 to buy her entire family a house. I'm 34 years old. I work in finance, and I need to get this off my chest because basically I've been dealing with something for 8 years that started out simple and turned into a complete circus. It's about my ex, Rebecca, and how we went from having a pretty decent co-parenting relationship to this situation where she and her entire family think I should be the personal bank for her whole household, not just my kids. And when I say her whole household, I'm not exaggerating. Like, she literally asked me to buy them a house for all of them, but I'll get to that. I guess I should start at the beginning. Rebecca and I met when we were like 23, I think. It was one of those relationships that happen fast. You know, very intense at first, but never really had solid foundations. At 25, she got pregnant, and when we found out it was twins, like, we both knew we weren't ready, but we said, okay, let's try this. We stayed together until the twins were about 6 months old. And honestly, we realized we just didn't work as a couple. It wasn't dramatic or anything. We were just too different, and being together made us both miserable. So we decided to end the relationship but be adults about everything, for the kids, and for a while, it worked incredibly well. We established a 50-50 shared custody agreement. We communicated about everything related to the twins. We went together to parent meetings at daycare, that kind of thing. I paid my fair share of everything: child support, medical expenses, clothes, toys, everything split equitably or according to who had more capacity at the time. It was never a problem. Rebecca worked part-time as an administrative assistant, and I was already in finance, earning decently. So if she needed extra help for something for the kids, I'd cover it without drama. It was, I don't know, like the ideal divorce situation if such a thing exists. 2 years after our separation, Rebecca met Thomas. He was also divorced and had a daughter the same age as our twins, like about 3 years old at that point. They got married pretty fast. In less than a year, they were already living together and the whole thing. At first, I thought it was good. You know, Rebecca seemed happy. The kids had a constant father figure at their mom's house, all good. Thomas seemed like a decent guy the few times we coincided. He worked in construction or something like that, and his daughter was sweet with my kids. I didn't see any red flags at the time, but looking back, I should have paid more attention to how things started. The first signs were subtle. Rebecca started suggesting that when I took the twins to the movies or the park, I should also invite Thomas's daughter. She'd say things like, "They're siblings now. It would be nice if they spent more time together. You know, she adores them." And look, I understood where she was coming from. Like, sure, the kids lived together and got along well, but I thought my time with my kids was precisely that. My time with my kids. It's not that I had anything against the girl, not at all, but I felt it was weird that she was asking me to include her in everything. The first time I said, okay, to not make waves. But after that I explained that I preferred to use my custody time just with the twins, and she accepted it, but I noticed she didn't like it. Then came the birthdays. When the twins turned 4, I threw a party at my apartment, invited their little friends from daycare, bought a cake, gifts, all the normal stuff. Rebecca arrived with Thomas and his daughter, which was fine, but afterwards she called me and said the girl had felt bad because the twins had gotten bigger gifts than her. She asked me, literally asked me, to buy equivalent gifts for her stepdaughter in the future when I bought things for my kids. And I was like, wait, what? I explained as diplomatically as possible that I was responsible for my children, not for her husband's children, and that I understood they wanted to raise a united family. But that didn't mean I had to treat all the children equally, financially. She got angry, said I was selfish and didn't understand what a blended family was. That's when the real problems started. Rebecca began expecting me to babysit her stepdaughter when she and Thomas needed a sitter. She'd send me messages like, "Hey, I'm dropping all 3 kids off with you Friday because we have a date, pick up in 2 hours." And I'd be like, "Excuse me? It's not my custody week, and I'm not your family's babysitter either." But if I said no, she'd make a whole drama about how I was rejecting her daughter, how it was unfair to the kids that I treated them differently, all that manipulative guilt. I tried to stay calm, to explain my boundaries clearly, but it was impossible. She just wouldn't accept that I had the right to say no. Things escalated when she got pregnant with Thomas. They had a girl. And suddenly, the house had 4 kids, the twins when they were there, the stepdaughter full-time, and the new baby. And at some point that year, Thomas's nephew, who was like 8 years old, I think, moved in with them because his parents were going through problems. I don't remember exactly what, but it was a complicated situation. So now there were 5 kids in that house, and Rebecca started sending me messages about how difficult it was financially to support everyone, how Thomas earned well, but it wasn't enough for 5 kids, that kind of thing. I'd send my child support on time every month, paid everything that corresponded to my kids, but I felt like she was setting me up to ask me for more. I decided we needed to change the co-parenting style because this wasn't working anymore. I had read about parallel parenting, where basically each parent does their thing without so much communication or coordination, just what's strictly necessary. I proposed it to Rebecca, and she told me I was destroying the relationship, that I was being cruel to the children, but I held my ground. We switched to text messages only for essential things. We used a co-parenting app to track expenses and schedules, and I stopped attending events where her whole blended family would be. It was easier for me, honestly, although Rebecca sent me long messages every 2 weeks telling me how selfish I was. Everything exploded about 6 months ago. The twins' school, which is a pretty good private school, where I pay the full tuition because Rebecca can't, announced an educational trip to Washington, D.C. for 3rd through 5th grade classes. It was expensive, like $2,500 per kid, but it included flights, hotel, meals, museum tickets, a whole week of incredible experience. My twins were in 4th grade, and Thomas's stepdaughter was in 5th, and the nephew was in 3rd, I think. So all 4 kids qualified to go if the parents could pay. As soon as I found out about the trip, I knew there was going to be drama. The twins came to my house super excited, talking about the trip, saying that all their siblings were going to go. And I told them yes, that of course they were going to go, that Dad was going to pay for their trip, no problem. I didn't say anything about the other kids because, well, it wasn't my place. But I knew Rebecca was going to come with demands. And of course she did. 2 days later, I get a really long text message where she explains that she and Thomas can't pay for the trip for all 4 kids, that they can only pay for the stepdaughter because she's the oldest and it would be unfair if she didn't go, but that the twins and the nephew wouldn't be able to go. She told me this was going to cause huge family problems, that the kids were going to feel excluded. Literally. She asked me for $10,000 total to send all 4 kids, because in addition to the $2,500 per kid, they needed extra money for expenses and to buy them new, appropriate clothes for the trip. I read the message like 3 times because I couldn't believe what I was reading. I responded to her, super clear, that I was going to pay the full trip for my 2 children, but that it wasn't my responsibility to pay for her husband's children. I suggested she talk to Thomas about how they could handle the situation with his daughter and his nephew, but that didn't concern me. I thought that made it clear, but oh no, this was just beginning. Rebecca called me that same night, screaming about how I was selfish, a bad father, how I was harming the children by dividing the family. Thomas was there too. I could hear him in the background saying things about how I didn't understand what a real family was. I stayed calm, repeated my position, and hung up when she started insulting me. But the messages didn't stop. Every day I'd get texts about how terrible I was, about how the twins were going to suffer at school when their siblings couldn't go, about how I had so much money and was so stingy that I didn't want to share with innocent children. A week later, Rebecca asked me to meet in person to discuss this like adults. I agreed, thinking maybe we could reach some kind of understanding, although in my head it was already super clear that I wasn't going to change my mind. We met at a diner near her house, and she arrived with a whole prepared presentation. She brought papers with the costs broken down, photos of all 4 kids together, a whole emotional strategy like, look how happy they are, imagine if you separate them. Thomas didn't come, but sent a message during the meeting, saying he was willing to pay me back over time if I financed everything now. I listened to everything, let her say what she needed to say, and then I was completely direct. I told her I understood her situation, That I didn't doubt it was difficult to have 5 kids with limited expenses, but that I didn't sign up to be the financial provider for her entire family. That my legal and moral obligations were to my biological children, period. That Thomas had his own responsibilities with his children, and that together they needed to find a way to manage their finances without counting on me. I told her this wasn't negotiable, that it wasn't a discussion, and that she needed to stop pressuring me because my answer wasn't going to change. Rebecca started crying there in the diner, saying I was destroying the family, that the twins were going to hate me when they grew up and realized I had caused this division, but I didn't budge. I paid for my coffee, told her I hoped she'd find a solution with Thomas, and left. I felt bad. Sure, nobody wants to see their ex crying in public, but I also felt like an enormous relief from finally having established that boundary so clearly that there was no room for misinterpretations. I thought that would be the end, but then the family campaign started. Rebecca's mom called me, her sister sent me like 20 messages, her brother found me on LinkedIn and sent me a super passive-aggressive professional message about family responsibility. All basically saying the same thing, that I was horrible, that I had the money and didn't want to share it, that I was traumatizing innocent children. I blocked some, ignored others, but it was exhausting. I felt like they were attacking me from all sides. And the worst part is they started making up stories about me, saying I was stingy in general, that I had never been a good father, pure lies designed to make me feel guilty. 2 weeks before the deadline to pay for the trip, Rebecca made one last attempt. She sent me a message saying we needed to talk urgently, that she had found a compromise solution. I called her because, I don't know, maybe part of me wanted to believe she had finally understood. Her proposal was that I pay for the twins completely, as I had already said I would, but that I also give $2,000 to help with the other 2 kids, and she and Thomas would cover the rest. She said it was fair because I earned more than them, and that $2,000 wasn't that much for me, but would make a huge difference for them. I told her no. Simple and clear. She started with the same speech again, and I interrupted her. I said, Rebecca, listen to me carefully because I'm not going to repeat this again. I pay for my children. Only my children. You decided to marry Thomas. You decided to have another baby with him. You decided to accept his nephew into your home. Those were your decisions, and I respect them, but they're not my financial responsibility. If you can't pay for the trip for all the kids, then you need to do what all parents in that situation do. Decide who goes and who doesn't, or find a way to raise the money yourselves. But I'm not going to be your solution. And if you keep pressuring me, if your family keeps harassing me, I'm going to have to take legal measures to make them stop. I think the tone of my voice scared her a little because she went quiet for a moment. Then she said something about how I had changed, how I had become cold, and hung up. After that call, the messages from her family stopped. I don't know if she told them to stop or if my legal threat worked, but I finally had peace. I paid the $5,000 for my twins to go on the trip, plus another $500 so they'd have pocket money and could buy souvenirs. The deadline came and passed. And it turns out, Rebecca and Thomas found a way to pay for the stepdaughter by selling Rebecca's car and buying a cheaper one. But the nephew didn't go. The twins told me their little sister was sad that their cousin didn't go. But honestly, I didn't feel any guilt. It wasn't my problem to solve. The trip was in April, and the twins had an amazing time. They sent me photos every day, brought me a mug from the Smithsonian, told me every detail when they got back. It was worth every penny seeing how happy and excited they were. And you know what was crazy? A week after the trip, Rebecca sent me a message, a short one, saying thanks for sending the kids. They had a great time. I'm glad you were able to do that for them. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was like an acknowledgement that I had done the right thing for my children, and that was something, I guess. Things calmed down for a few months after that. We went back to our parallel parenting routine. We exchanged the kids at established times. We kept in touch only by text about essential things. I thought maybe we had finally reached an understanding, that Rebecca had accepted the boundaries and we could coexist peacefully in our separate roles as parents. The twins seemed fine. They never mentioned problems at their mom's house related to the trip or money, and I breathed with relief, thinking the drama was over. But then, about a month ago, I get a message from Rebecca, completely out of the ordinary. She tells me she needs to talk to me about something important, something that would really benefit the twins. I already knew it. There was going to be something I wouldn't like. But I told her, okay, what is it? And she dropped it on me. Just like that, without context, that she and Thomas were looking for a bigger house because the apartment where they live isn't enough for everyone anymore, and that she had found a perfect house that cost like $380,000, and that if I put down the $80,000 down payment, they could qualify for the mortgage and the twins would have a better environment when they were there. I stared at the message for at least 5 minutes, unable to believe what I was reading. Like, was she literally asking me to buy a house for her, her husband, and all their kids? Did she really think I was going to do that? I responded with a simple, no, absolutely not, and I thought that ended the conversation. But she insisted, sending me photos of the house, telling me it would technically be for the twins, that it would be in writing that part of the house belonged to them, that it would be an investment in their future. A whole elaborate justification to make it sound reasonable when it was completely ridiculous. I told her no again, more firmly. I explained that if I wanted to make an investment in my children's future, I'd open college accounts for them or buy properties in my name that I'd eventually leave them, not put $80,000 into a house where she and Thomas would live, and that would basically be a gift to their whole family. That my money was mine to manage as I wanted, and that I already fulfilled all my obligations to my children. I reminded her that we had this conversation just a few months ago, and that I thought we had reached an understanding about boundaries and responsibilities. Rebecca responded with another long message about how I didn't value the twins' well-being, how they suffered living in a cramped apartment when they could have a beautiful house with a yard, how I was choosing my financial comfort over my children's quality of life. And you know what? This time I didn't bother with long explanations. I just told her, my answer is no. It's always going to be no for these types of requests. And if you can't accept that, then I don't know what else to tell you. We didn't discuss it further. She didn't respond after that. And now we're basically where we started 8 years ago, but with much more tension and much less mutual respect. And the thing is, I know deep down, that I did the right thing. I established clear boundaries. I maintained my responsibilities to my children, and I didn't let them manipulate me into becoming the personal bank for a family that isn't mine. But I'm also not going to lie. There are days where I wonder if I should have been more flexible, if maybe I could have found a way to help without feeling like I was being used. The twins are 7 years old now. At some point, they're going to understand this whole situation. And I wonder what they're going to think of me. If they're going to understand why I maintained these lines, or if they're going to think I was selfish. For now, what I do is focus on being the best father I can be during my time with them. I take them to their activities. I help them with homework. We spend quality time. I tell them I love them every day. I keep paying my fair share of everything. I've never been late on child support. I'm always available when they need me. And when I have doubts, I remind myself that maintaining healthy boundaries doesn't make me a bad father. It makes me someone who won't be manipulated or controlled, and that's important too. The twins are going to grow up, and they're going to see that I was always there for them, that I always fulfilled my responsibilities to them specifically, and I hope that's enough.